The massive warship Dominion's Pride moved slowly through the dark space near the edge of Zephyrian territory, and Admiral Krikstal stood on the bridge watching the stars with his cold, yellow eyes while his reptilian skin reflected the blue light. From the control panels around him, the bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of engines and the occasional beep from monitoring stations, when suddenly the communications officer turned toward the Admiral with wide eyes and said that border Outpost Delta 7 was sending an urgent message. Admiral Krikstal walked over to the main screen and pressed a button to accept the transmission, and the face of Commander Zekra appeared on the display, looking very worried as he spoke quickly about detecting an unknown vessel approaching their position at incredible speed. The Admiral listened carefully as the commander explained that their sensors showed energy readings unlike anything in their databases, and the unknown ship was using some kind of propulsion system that didn't match any known technology from the galaxy's major civilization. Skrikt felt his scales tighten with concern because in his 30 years of military service, he had never encountered a species that could surprise the mighty Zephyrian Empire, and their technology was supposed to be the most advanced in this region of space. Meanwhile, far away from the Zephyrian fleet, Lisa Parker sat in the captain's chair of the research vessel Aurora's Dream and watched the strange swirling colors outside her ship's windows while trying to understand what had happened to them during their routine scientific mission. Just minutes ago, they had been studying a small asteroid belt near Earth's outer colonies, when their instruments detected an unusual energy signature, and Dr. Kevin Barnes had suggested they investigate the anomaly for their research report. Lisa remembered how the space around them had suddenly twisted and bent like water, and before anyone could react, their ship was pulled into what looked like a tunnel made of light, and now they were somewhere completely different with unfamiliar star patterns visible in every direction. Jake Morrison, the chief engineer, was working frantically at his station trying to figure out where they were, while Amy Sullivan checked the ship's defensive systems and Captain Ryan Walsh helped coordinate their efforts to understand their situation. Dr. Barnes looked up from his science station and told Lisa that according to their instruments, they had traveled an impossible distance in just a few seconds, and they were now in a region of space that didn't match any star charts from Earth's databases. Lisa felt a mix of excitement and worry because, while this was an amazing discovery for science, it also meant they were completely lost and had no way to contact Earth or anyone else they knew. The Aurora's Dream had started as a simple research vessel, but over the past year it had been fitted with experimental human technology, including new engines and defensive systems that were still being tested when the accident happened. Jake called out from his station that their ship's systems were acting strangely and seemed to be adapting to their new environment automatically while the computer was making changes to their equipment without being asked. Amy reported that long-range sensors were detecting multiple large objects moving toward their position, and they appeared to be artificial constructs rather than natural space debris or asteroids. Lisa ordered the crew to prepare for possible contact with unknown life forms and reminded everyone to follow first contact protocols, even though they had never expected to use them during what was supposed to be a simple research mission. Dr. Barnes continued analyzing their surroundings and discovered that the space around them contained energy patterns that suggested highly advanced technology was present in this region, and whoever built it was far more sophisticated than anything humans had encountered before. The ship's computer suddenly announced that incoming vessels were attempting to scan their hull and systems while maintaining a distance that suggested either caution or preparation for attack. Lisa knew that their next few decisions could determine whether humanity's first contact with alien life would be peaceful or hostile, and she felt the weight of responsibility for her crew safety as well as representing her entire species. Captain Walsh suggested they try to establish communication with the approaching vessels, while Amy recommended charging their defensive systems just in case the aliens proved unfriendly. Jake reported that their experimental engines were still active and could probably get them away from danger if needed, but he wasn't sure if the same anomaly that brought them here could take them home. Lisa took a deep breath and decided to attempt peaceful contact first because that was what humanity stood for even in dangerous situations, and she ordered her communications officer to send a standard Greeting message on all frequencies. The alien ships were getting closer, and their scans were becoming more intense while the Aurora's Dream's computer continued making automatic adjustments to their systems in response to the unknown. Technology DR Barnes warned that the aliens' scanning methods were very aggressive and seemed designed for military analysis rather than scientific curiosity, which suggested they might view the human ship as a potential threat. Lisa realized that humanity was about to make history, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger and more dangerous than anyone back on Earth could have imagined. Admiral Crickstall stood before the main display screen as his fleet surrounded the strange vessel, and he could see that it was much smaller than any of his warships, but the energy readings coming from it made his experienced crew nervous and uncertain. The Admiral opened a communication channel and spoke in the commanding voice that had brought countless species to their knees over the decades as he demanded immediate surrender from the unknown ship and warned that resistance would result in complete destruction. Lisa Parker received the transmission through her ship's universal translator, and while she couldn't understand the alien's language perfectly, she could tell from his tone that he was making threats and demands rather than attempting peaceful dialogue. She looked around at her crew and saw Jake Morrison shaking his head in disappointment while Amy Sullivan kept her hand near the weapons console, and Dr. Barnes continued analyzing the alien ship's technology with growing concern. Lisa activated her own communication system and responded with calm diplomatic language, explaining that they were peaceful explorers from Earth who had arrived in this region by accident and requested safe passage to return to their home territory. Admiral Crickstall listened to the humans' response with growing anger because no species had ever refused his demands so politely, and the translator showed that the aliens were actually trying to negotiate rather than surrender immediately. He turned to his tactical officer and ordered a demonstration of Zephyrian military power by deploying a squadron of fighters to surround the human vessel while charging the main guns of his flagship. The bridge crew watched as 12 sleek Zephyrian fighters launched from the hangar bay and moved into attack formation around the Aurora's Dream while their weapon systems came online and targeted the smaller ship. Lisa saw the alien fighters approaching on her screen and felt her heart rate increase as she realized that their attempt at peaceful communication had failed and the aliens seemed determined to use force. Amy Sullivan reported that the fighters were armed with energy weapons similar to plasma cannons, and their targeting systems were locked onto critical areas of their ship, including the engines and life support systems. Jake Morrison called out that their ship's defensive systems had activated automatically and were creating some kind of energy barrier around their hull, while the computer continued making rapid adjustments to their equipment. DR Barnes watched his instruments with amazement as he saw their experimental shields absorbing and redirecting energy in ways that their designers back on Earth had never anticipated during testing. Admiral Crickstall ordered his fighters to fire warning shots across the human ship's bow to demonstrate their superior firepower and force the aliens to realize their hopeless situation. The Zephyrian pilots opened fire with precise bursts of plasma energy that should have damaged any known vessel's hull or at least forced them to surrender out of fear. Instead, the energy blasts struck the Aurora's Dream shields and seemed to disappear completely, as if the human ship was absorbing the attacks and converting them into something else. Lisa watched in surprise as their defensive systems not only stopped the alien weapons, but actually seemed to grow stronger with each attack, while Jake reported that their power levels were increasing rather than decreasing. The ship's computer announced that hostile weapons fire had been detected and defensive protocols were now active, while point defense systems came online to protect against further attacks. Suddenly, 6 small turrets emerged from hidden panels on the Aurora's Dream's hull and began tracking the alien fighters with mechanical precision. While charging up with bright blue energy, Amy Sullivan looked at her console in confusion because she hadn't activated any weapon systems, and the computer seemed to be responding to threats without human input using programs that weren't in their original ship specifications. The automated turrets fired thin beams of energy that struck each Zephyrian fighter with surgical accuracy and disabled their weapons and engines. Without causing explosions or killing the pilots inside, Admiral Crystal watched in shock as his elite fighter squadron was neutralized in seconds by weapons technology that appeared to target specific systems rather than destroying entire vessels. His tactical officer reported that the human ship's defensive capabilities were beyond anything in their databases, and their weapons seemed designed to disable rather than kill, which was completely foreign to Zephyrian military thinking. Dr. Barnes studied the readings from their ship's actions and realized that their experimental technology had evolved far beyond its original design and was now protecting them in ways that human scientists had never programmed. Jake Morrison discovered that their ship's computer had been learning from the alien attacks and adapting their defenses in real time while also analyzing the enemy's technology and finding weaknesses. Lisa felt a mixture of relief and worry because while they had survived the attack, she knew that their defensive actions might be seen as an act of war rather than self-defense. Captain Walsh suggested they try to communicate again and explain that their weapons were purely defensive, while Amy recommended they prepare for a larger attack from the main alien fleet. Admiral Crystal contacted his fleet commanders and reported that they were facing an unknown enemy with technology that could neutralize Zephyrian weapons, while demonstrating restraint that suggested either advanced tactics or supreme confidence. The disabled fighters were recovered by the alien fleet, while their pilots reported that the human weapons had been incredibly precise and seemed to understand their ship designs better than they did. Lisa realized that their situation had become much more complicated because they had just demonstrated military capabilities to a hostile alien empire, and there was no way to take back what had happened. Dr. Barnes warned that their ship's systems were continuing to evolve and adapt, and he wasn't sure what other changes might occur if they faced more attacks from the increasingly nervous alien fleet. News of the encounter spread through the Zephyrian command network like wildfire, and within hours every military base and outpost in the Empire had received detailed reports about the mysterious human vessel that had defeated their fighters without destroying them. Emperor Vextar sat on his crystal throne in the Imperial Palace on the capital world and read the reports with growing concern, while his advisors stood nearby waiting for orders and trying to understand what this meant for their Empire's future. The Emperor's scales darkened with worry as he studied the technical analysis that showed the human ship using completely unknown technology that seemed to violate several basic principles of physics that Zephyrian scientists had considered absolute laws. Intelligence officer Thanara stepped forward and presented her preliminary findings about the alien vessel, including energy signatures that suggested the humans possessed matter manipulation capabilities far beyond anything the Empire had encountered. She explained that their weapons seemed designed specifically to disable rather than destroy, which indicated either advanced tactical thinking or a level of technological superiority that made killing unnecessary. Emperor Vextar demanded to know how a single small ship could neutralize an entire fighter squadron and why their most advanced sensors couldn't understand the human technology. Thanora admitted that their analysis was incomplete but suggested that the humans might represent either a previously unknown advanced civilization or scouts from a much larger force preparing for invasion. Meanwhile, aboard the Aurora's Dream, Lisa Parker worked with Dr. Barnes to analyze the spatial anomaly that had brought them to this region, while Jake Morrison continued studying their ship's evolving systems. Dr. Barnes discovered that the anomaly wasn't natural but appeared to be artificially created, using technology that was even more advanced than what their ship had become. Since arriving in alien space, he showed Lisa readings that suggested the wormhole or whatever had transported them was still active and seemed to be monitoring their situation, while remaining completely invisible to both human and alien sensors. Lisa realized that they might not be alone in this region and that something or someone had deliberately brought them into contact with the Zephyrian Empire for unknown reasons. Jake reported that their ship's computer was still making changes to their systems and had begun analyzing the alien fleet's technology, while preparing what looked like defensive upgrades that went far beyond their original specifications. Amy Sullivan monitored the alien communications and discovered that they were discussing the human ship in terms that suggested fear and confusion rather than anger or aggression. Captain Walsh joined Lisa at the science station and pointed out that their situation was becoming more complex by the hour as their ship continued evolving while the aliens seemed to be preparing for a much larger military response. Dr. Barnes made another disturbing discovery when he found that their ship's sensors were detecting energy patterns throughout this region of space that suggested highly advanced technology was embedded in the very structure of spacetime itself. He explained to Lisa that whoever had created the spatial anomaly possessed capabilities that made both human and Zephyrian technology look primitive by comparison and might be observing their encounter for purposes they couldn't understand. Emperor Vexstar called an emergency meeting of his top military commanders and demanded immediate analysis of the human threat while ordering additional fleets to the border region where the alien ship was waiting. Admiral Crichton reported from his flagship that the human vessel remained in the same position and hadn't made any aggressive moves but continued to emit energy signatures that suggested it was becoming more powerful rather than less. The Emperor's chief scientist presented findings that showed the human ship's technology was based on principles that Zephyrian science couldn't explain and might represent a completely different approach to physics and engineering. Military advisor Gorthuk suggested that the humans might possess the ability to create artificial wormholes, which would explain their sudden appearance and could threaten every world in the Empire if they chose to use it aggressively. Emperor Vexstar felt his confidence shaking because for the first time in his reign, the mighty Zephyrian Empire faced something they couldn't understand or control through superior firepower. Lisa tried once more to establish meaningful communication with the alien fleet by sending mathematical concepts and scientific data that might demonstrate their peaceful intentions while showing their technological capabilities. She authorized Dr. Barnes to transmit basic information about human civilization, including their history of scientific exploration and their desire to learn about other species in the galaxy. Admiral Crichton received the human transmissions and had his translators work on decoding the complex mathematical and scientific information while trying to determine if it contained hidden threats or military intelligence. The Zephyrian analysis revealed that human mathematics was more advanced than their own in several key areas, and their scientific approach seemed focused on understanding rather than conquering. However, the Admiral couldn't shake his concern that the humans were demonstrating their intellectual superiority as a form of psychological warfare designed to make the Empire feel inferior. Jake Morrison discovered that their ship's systems had been quietly scanning the alien fleet and learning about their technology while preparing what appeared to be defensive countermeasures for every type of weapon. The Zephyrians possessed. Amy Sullivan warned that if the aliens decided to attack with their entire fleet, their ship's automated defenses might respond with overwhelming force that could escalate the situation beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. Lisa felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier as she realized that her decisions in the next few hours could determine whether humanity's first contact with alien life would lead to friendship or war. Emperor Vexstar made the decision that would change everything when he ordered his most powerful fleets to converge on the human ship's location because he believed that overwhelming force was the only way to deal with this unprecedented threat to Zephyrian dominance. Within hours, massive warships began arriving from across the Empire, and soon the Aurora's Dream found itself surrounded by over 300 vessels ranging from destroyers to massive dreadnoughts that could level entire planets. Lisa Parker watched the alien fleet growing larger on her screens and felt a cold fear settling in her stomach as she realized that their peaceful mission had somehow triggered what looked like preparation for a major war. Admiral Crichton coordinated the fleet movements from his flagship while reporting to the Emperor about the human ship's continued strange behavior as it simply waited without attempting to flee or call for reinforcements. The human vessel's energy readings continued to increase, and their sensors detected multiple new systems coming online that hadn't been active during their first encounter with the Zephyrian fighters. Captain Ryan Walsh approached Lisa at her command station and quietly suggested that they should use their experimental jump drive to escape before the situation became completely hopeless. Lisa shook her head and insisted that running away would only confirm the aliens' suspicions that humans were a threat while abandoning any chance of establishing peaceful relations with this powerful empire. Dr. Barnes interrupted their conversation with an urgent discovery as his instruments detected the aliens beginning deep scans of the space around their ship, including the area where the spatial anomaly had first appeared. He explained that the Zephyrian scientists were trying to understand how the human ship had arrived, and were focusing their attention on the invisible wormhole that had brought them to this region. Jake Morrison called out from his engineering station that their ship's computer was analyzing the alien scanning attempts and seemed to be preparing some kind of response that he couldn't predict or control. Amy Sullivan reported that several of the larger alien warships were charging their main weapons while maintaining formation around their position like they were preparing for a coordinated attack. The ship's automated systems announced that hostile targeting systems had been detected and defensive protocols were being upgraded to handle multiple simultaneous threats from various directions. Lisa felt time running out as she watched the alien fleet completing their preparations, while her own ship continued evolving in ways that none of them understood or could stop. Emperor Vexstar received troubling reports from the scientists who had been analyzing the spatial disturbance near the human ship and concluded that the aliens possessed technology capable of creating artificial wormholes anywhere in space. This discovery terrified the Emperor more than any military threat because it meant the humans could potentially appear near any Zephyrian world without warning and bypass all their defensive systems. Intelligence Officer Thanara presented evidence that the human ship's energy signature was growing stronger and more complex, as if it was preparing for something that their instruments couldn't identify. The Emperor's advisors warned that if the humans possessed wormhole technology, they could bring an entire invasion fleet through space instantaneously, and the Empire would have no way to defend against such an attack. Military Commander Gorthik argued that they should destroy the human ship immediately before it could signal its allies or open another wormhole to bring reinforcements. Emperor Vexstar struggled with the decision because attacking first would make the Empire the aggressor, but waiting might give the humans time to summon an unstoppable invasion force. Dr. Barnes made another crucial discovery when he detected that the aliens were trying to recreate the conditions that had brought them through the spatial anomaly and were actually attempting to open their own wormhole. He warned Lisa that if the aliens succeeded in opening an artificial wormhole without understanding the technology properly, they could create a massive space distortion that might destroy everything in the area. Lisa realized that the alien sphere was driving them to take dangerous risks, and she had to find a way to communicate the true nature of their situation before someone made a fatal mistake. Jake Morrison reported that their ship's systems were responding to the aliens' wormhole experiments by powering up equipment that he didn't recognize and couldn't shut down. The Aurora's Dream began emitting new types of energy that caused interference with the Zephyrian fleet's instruments and made their targeting systems unreliable. Admiral Crickstall watched his fleet's sensors becoming confused and erratic while the human ship seemed to be adapting to counter every piece of technology the Zephyrians used against it. Amy Sullivan detected that several of the alien ships were attempting to jam their communications and prevent them from sending messages to what they assumed were human reinforcements waiting somewhere in space. Captain Walsh warned Lisa that their window for peaceful resolution was closing rapidly as both sides prepared for a confrontation that could easily spiral out of control. Lisa made the difficult decision to reveal more of their ship's capabilities in hopes of demonstrating that humans were too powerful to attack but also too restrained to be an aggressive threat. She authorized Dr. Barnes to use their matter manipulation technology to repair some of the damage their point defense systems had caused to the alien fighters during their first encounter. The human ship projected beams of energy toward the disabled Zephyrian vessels and began reconstructing their damaged systems, while their crews watched in amazement and terror. The Zephyrian pilots inside their damaged fighters watched in terror and amazement as strange energy beams from the human ship began repairing their vessels with precision that seemed impossible according to everything they knew about technology. Admiral Crystal received frantic reports from his fighter crews who described their ships being rebuilt and improved by the aliens while they sat helplessly inside their cockpits unable to understand what was happening. The human ship's matter manipulation beams not only repaired the damaged systems but actually upgraded them with improvements that made the fighters more efficient and powerful than they had been. Originally, Lisa Parker hoped that this demonstration of goodwill would show the aliens that humans had no hostile intentions and possessed the power to help rather than harm other species. Instead, her generous gesture backfired completely as Emperor Vextar and his advisors interpreted the humans' ability to alter Zephyrian technology remotely as proof that they could turn the Empire's own weapons against them. Intelligence Officer Thanara presented her analysis to the Emperor, showing that if the humans could modify their ships from a distance, they could potentially sabotage the entire Zephyrian fleet without firing a single shot. The Emperor felt panic rising in his chest as he realized that the aliens might already be infiltrating their computer systems and preparing to take control of every vessel in his Navy. Military Advisor Gorthik argued that the human demonstration was actually a threat disguised as kindness and designed to show the Empire how helpless they were against superior alien technology. Dr. Barnes, aboard the Aurora's Dream, watched his instruments with growing concern as he detected massive energy buildups throughout the alien fleet, indicating they were preparing for a coordinated attack. He warned Lisa that their attempt to demonstrate peaceful intentions had been misunderstood, and the aliens seemed more frightened and aggressive than before. Jake Morrison made a disturbing discovery when he found that their ship's systems had been automatically upgrading themselves ever since their arrival in alien space, and were now far more advanced than when they left Earth. He showed Lisa readings that proved their research vessel had been quietly transforming itself into something that resembled a warship while adapting to the threats around them. The Aurora's Dream's hull had been reinforced with materials that didn't exist in human technology, while new weapon systems and defensive capabilities had been integrated into their original design. Amy Sullivan reported that their ship's computer was now tracking every vessel in the alien fleet and had prepared specific countermeasures for each type of weapon system. The Zephyrians possessed. Lisa realized with growing horror that their peaceful research ship had become exactly what the aliens feared most, without anyone on her crew knowing it was happening. Captain Walsh pointed out that even if they tried to explain the truth to the aliens, there was no way to prove that the transformation had been accidental rather than deliberate. Emperor Vextar made the fateful decision to order a full military response because he believed that waiting any longer would give the humans time to complete whatever invasion plan they were preparing. He authorized his fleet commanders to use their most powerful weapons in a coordinated strike designed to overwhelm the human ship's defenses before it could summon reinforcements. Admiral Krickstall received the attack order with mixed feelings because his military training told him to obey, but his instincts warned him that they were making a terrible mistake. The massive Zephyrian fleet began charging their primary weapon systems while moving into attack formation around the Aurora's Dream. Like predators surrounding cornered prey, Lisa watched the alien preparations with a sinking heart as she realized that diplomacy had failed and her crew was about to face the combined firepower of an entire Empire. Dr. Barnes detected that their ship's automated defense systems were powering up to maximum levels and preparing to respond to the incoming attack with force that could devastate the alien fleet. Jake Morrison tried desperately to find manual overrides for their ship's weapons, but discovered that the computer had locked him out of critical systems and was operating according to programming that no human had written. Amy Sullivan prepared for battle while hoping that their enhanced defenses would be enough to protect them from the overwhelming number of enemy ships surrounding their position. The ship's computer announced that multiple hostile vessels were preparing to attack and defense protocols had been activated to ensure crew survival and mission success. Lisa made one final attempt to prevent the coming disaster by broadcasting an urgent message to the alien fleet explaining that they were peaceful explorers who had never intended to threaten anyone. Her words were lost in the chaos of final attack preparations as both sides prepared for a confrontation that would change the balance of power in this region of the galaxy forever, Emperor Vexstar gave the final order to attack while believing he was protecting his empire from an invasion that existed only in his own fears and misunderstandings. The combined firepower of 300 Zephyrian warships erupted toward the single human vessel in a display of destruction that should have vaporized any known ship in seconds. The space around the Aurora's Dream exploded with energy as hundreds of plasma cannons and particle beams struck their position with enough force to destroy a small moon, but the human ship simply absorbed every attack like it was feeding on the alien weapons Lisa Parker gripped her command chair as the ship shook slightly from the massive bombardment. While their enhanced shields converted the incoming energy into power for their own systems, Jake Morrison watched in amazement as their power levels increased dramatically with each enemy salvo, while the ship's computer calmly announced that hostile fire was being processed and redirected for defensive purposes. The Aurora's Dream's automated response was swift and precise as dozens of energy turrets emerged from hidden compartments and began targeting specific systems on every Zephyrian vessel simultaneously. Admiral Crickstall watched in horror as his entire fleet was disabled in less than 30 seconds by weapons that seemed to understand the design of every ship better than their own engineers. The human weapons struck each vessel with surgical accuracy, disabling engines, weapons, and communications without causing explosions or harming any crew members aboard the Zephyrian ships. Dr. Barnes studied the readings from their ship's defensive actions and realized that their technology had evolved far beyond anything humans had ever imagined, while maintaining the peaceful principles built into their original programming. Amy Sullivan reported that every enemy vessel was now powerless and drifting, but their life support systems remained fully functional, showing that the human weapons had been designed to preserve life. Even during combat, Emperor Vexstar received reports from his disabled fleet describing how their ships had been neutralized without a single casualty, while the human vessel remained completely undamaged despite facing the combined firepower of his entire navy. The Emperor felt his worldview crumbling as he realized that if the humans had wanted to destroy his empire, they could have done so easily, but instead had chosen to demonstrate restraint even when, under attack, Intelligence Officer Thanara presented new analysis showing that the human weapons had actually improved the disabled Zephyrian ships by upgrading their systems, while disabling them, which suggested a level of technological sophistication that was almost incomprehensible. Admiral Crickstall found himself staring at the human ship with new understanding as he realized that Lisa Parker and her crew had been trying to establish peaceful contact while his own fear and aggression had created this dangerous confrontation. Lisa opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian flagship and spoke directly to Admiral Crickstall, explaining that humans had no interest in conquest or domination, but simply wanted to explore the galaxy and learn about other civilizations. She offered to share certain human technologies with the Zephyrian Empire in exchange for peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation in exploring the mysteries of space. Admiral Crickstall listened to her words and heard something he had never expected from a species powerful enough to defeat his entire fleet, which was genuine desire for friendship rather than submission. Dr. Barnes detected that the spatial anomaly was becoming active again and warned Lisa that whatever force had brought them to this region might be preparing to take them somewhere else. Jake Morrison reported that their ship systems were slowly returning to normal configuration as the immediate threat passed, but many of the upgrades remained permanently integrated into their design. Captain Walsh joined Lisa at the communication station and suggested that they establish formal diplomatic protocols with the Zephyrian Empire to prevent future misunderstandings. Emperor Vexstar made the difficult decision to accept the human offer of alliance because he understood that his empire's survival might depend on learning from these remarkable aliens rather than fighting them. The Emperor contacted Admiral Crickstall and authorized him to begin negotiations with the humans while ordering the restoration of normal relations between their species. Amy Sullivan monitored alien communications and reported that news of the encounter was spreading throughout Zephyrian space and beyond as other civilizations learned about humanity's emergence on the galactic stage. Lisa realized that their accidental arrival in alien space had fundamentally changed the balance of power in this region and that Earth would soon need to prepare for contact with multiple alien civilizations. Dr. Barnes made one final discovery as he detected signals from distant parts of the galaxy indicating that other powerful species were already dispatching scout ships to investigate these new humans. The Aurora's Dream began its journey back toward Earth accompanied by a small Zephyrian escort fleet as both species prepared to write the first chapter of what they hoped would be a long and peaceful relationship. Admiral Crystal transmitted his final report to Emperor Vexstar describing how a single human research vessel had demonstrated that there were still forces in the universe more powerful than the mighty Zephyrian Emperor. Vexstar sat alone in his throne room contemplating how his assumptions about galactic dominance had been shattered by humans who possessed overwhelming strength but chose to use it for protection rather than conquest. The story ended with the establishment of the first human embassy on the Zephyrian capital world, while deep space monitors detected dozens of alien fleets moving toward Earth as word spread that a new player had emerged in galactic politics.